have to sit down really close to you.
Oh, it's doing a red thing on your face now, Mina. I think it's about to shoot you. It's like Squid Games. Sorry. Sorry, she goes to She watched Squid Games.
Should I?
No. It's not really for shoot you, Mina, I don't think. I mean, you bought this, so you know what its capabilities are.
Do I though? I'm starting to think maybe I started to do some. Am I aging? Right, okay.
We all are. It's terrible.
I feel like it needs to tilt more this way.
It definitely feels like it's still not centered. Just, I'll finish it up.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes the low-tech solution is the best solution. Yeah, it's still like tiny. Okay. All right. Should we start?
The light with me is not as good as the light with you. Do you see?
Yeah, you're right. Is that because I'm further forward, or is it just where the lights are?
Is that better?
I think it's better.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's better. All right. Do you want to start? Am I going to start? Or you just keep this recording going? Or
Yeah, we'll just keep it to the beginning of it. Hi everyone and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles. So we were together, so we decided why don't we start sort of just the first round of it. We'll obviously continue with our postcards to Serie A, but we thought since we're together we can discuss what we think is going to happen and just some sort of pre-season action, who we think could actually win Serie A, not actually go through the pre-season friendlies or
Sky
anything.
Sports News. We're in a secret dressing room. We've got hangers and everything.
God, I have no attention to detail, by the way, yeah. Nicky pointed out the shower room and all of this. I haven't noticed any of these things.
Yeah.
But basically what we're here to talk to you about, so we'll come back with more and more stuff, so obviously as the week progresses. But since we're here, we've decided that we can have a conversation about who we think will make top four.
Oh my God. We were already having this conversation, weren't we? Like, because we sat down, so a lot of you know, we've been doing transfer specials on Sky Sports News this summer. And so we like sit down and we have a bit of time before the show starts. And instead of talking about what we're supposed to talk about, we're always like, oh, what's happening? What's the news going to win the league? And I'm excited for this new season, Mina, because I really like, when you put me on the spot and you're like, so who's going to be in the top four?
Yeah.
My brain thinks in those answers. So like, I'll start answering and I'm like, oh, actually. So, you know, there's questions with everyone, aren't there? Napoli, league winners, I still think talent-wise, very, very strong. But neither of us has much faith in Rudy Garcia. So I don't think they'll necessarily win the league. I think they'll be in the top four. Inter, Simone Inzaghi gives me faith. Champions League final last season. I thought they were the best team in the last couple of months of the season. I thought they were the best team in Italy for the last part of the season. But say goodbye to Edin Dzeko, say goodbye to Romelu Lukaku, replace them with, I don't know, hopes and prayers, Marco Arnautovic. It doesn't feel very, very positive on that front. And you have sold some other players who matter, like Brozovic leaving matters, even if he wasn't in the starting 11 at the end of last season. Milan have made some really interesting moves in the transfer market, but they've said goodbye to Tonali, who obviously we're big fans of.
And lighting it up right now in Newcastle as well.
Right.
Which makes me think that they sold him for too cheap now. I'm like, you should have asked for 150 if Moses Caicedo was going for that much.
Yeah, so you know, questions. Juventus, I mean, they haven't really done a lot of anything. Maybe that's fine. Maybe take away the point selection. They were a top four side last season. Lazio, I mean, they said goodbye to Milinkovic-Savic. I have very little faith in them. But then you threw out the wild card even of Atalanta in this sort of title conversation, Mina.
Yeah, because I just think that with Atalanta, they've done some good business, right? Like, they brought in Scamacca, and I don't know why, but I really love Di Catalare. I know that he didn't work out in Milan. But you know, I've just been one of those people that has watched him before and has thought that he's such a talent that when they got him initially, Milan, I was really jealous of them, much like I'm jealous now that they have Chukwueze, which is the other player that I love massively. And I was really disappointed that he didn't work out with them, especially because it's Stefano Pioli, and you always think Pioli can get the most out of his players. But under Gasperini, you just think, maybe this is the time he'll shine. And if he doesn't, then they've got others, you know, from exactly like Scamacca. I think that they're just a side that always know how to extract potential, and I think that right now they could be the team to watch, and I think that they've made some investments in the market. I mean, Saki was asked if they could win the whole thing, and he was like, well, let's not push it that far, but I certainly think they could have a run in the top four, and there's a part of me that thinks I do too, but who's going to drop out?
Yeah, I think winning the whole thing, there's lots to think about. I mean, we always talk about it. It's still true. Like, there's lots of data that suggests when you're playing the Thursday night, Sunday schedule, the Europa League or Europa Conference League schedule, eventually over season that hurts you. So that's a detriment to them. They're not in the Champions League. But I'm kind of with you in that, you know, Højlund I was excited about as a footballer. I'm excited to see how he eventually does at Manchester United. But this is someone who I think they absolutely extracted a more than fair value for, and who, in the end, scored 9 goals last season. And you've replaced him with 2 strikers. So you've taken one striker who was young and exciting, had potential, but in the end, like, hadn't scored that many goals for you. With Scamacca, who I'm really, really happy to see back in Serie A, I think it's the right move for him. I think he's gone to a club where youth is so well treated, and where he's going to have a manager who's going to really try to give them the opportunities. But they've also got Traore up front now as well, haven't they? So they've got the two options up front instead of just one. And like you say, the potential sort of rejuvenation and projecting De Ketelaere. I almost think when you look around and you sort of think about the things that have changed at other clubs, the things that you're not sure about, whether it's Rudy Garcia at Napoli or whether it's Tonali being gone at Milan. Yes, you know, Atalanta have sold someone hugely expensive, but the end sort of feeling is still, yeah, but they're Atalanta, so I feel more confident that they'll deal with these things than the other clubs will. So I definitely think Atalanta are inching for the top 4. I don't know if I can go all the way to title race for them. I think that's still a big ask. But I also don't feel like really confident in anyone when I'm picking who I'm picking for the title.
No, this is actually a really interesting point, because I don't know whether it's just like, but I've started to go through this like little bit of a falling down the well business, where I don't understand anything's value anymore, if that makes sense. Like, I know that Tonali's good, but did I think that he'd be the best player for Newcastle in that game? I don't know, right? Like, I almost don't know how to judge things anymore. And so there's a part of me that thinks, I look at Inter squad, right, and I think they should be the team that wins it this season, because they should have been the team that won it last season in Serie A, had there not been a beautiful Napoli, because, you know, Spalletti knows how to put together a great team and managed to extract a lot of brilliance out of Kvaratskhelia, who had just arrived, right? At the time, you just think that there's going to be a time for them to embed and all of that. Lots of changes. They lost like Koulibaly and all of these differences. Dries Mertens, obviously in senior, but it was spectacular to watch. And you think that much change usually doesn't result in brilliance straight away, but it did. And there's a lot to be said about Inter not doing that. But then I look at Inter and I think Brozovic is a big loss. I understand Fratesi coming in. It's a good midfield. It's a hard-working midfield. It's an Italian core that they're trying to build right now. Kind of goes against them being called Internazionale. But I don't know how good they are, because I do think Lukaku for them is, you know, they should look for that kind of, you know, that type of player, which I'm not entirely sure that, I guess, I mean, Arnautovic, like you let go of Dzeko for Arnautovic,
yes,
you know? Yes. And then I just don't know what to expect of Marcus Thuram. He could be a phenomenon, or he could not be. And so there are question marks for me all over the pitch, like who's going to dictate the tempo perfectly. We know Çalhanoğlu can do great, but if there's an injury, like who's going to come in? And I think that's what they had so well, which is that you do have somebody like Brozovic to bring in, because he is just so talented. And I would have liked them to maybe more back into Kovacic.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's just a different story. So I don't know whether they are actually still a very good team, or whether there's a part of me that's not that sure about them anymore. Just because I want to see defensively also, I think there are so many problems that we've seen so far in pre-season. I don't think they look as solid as they used to. And that is a problem. We saw how many goals they conceded, especially away from home. Are they going to start the season conceding lots of goals again?
But the thing is, you don't know what's going to start with the start of the season, because they're still doing business. And I mean, this is classic Beppe Marotta, right? Like, you never expect Beppe Marotta to finish doing business until the end of the transfer window. So, to some degree, give the man time, right? Like, let him finish his transfer window. Some of the things they're doing do make you want to tear your hair out. I mean, as you just said, Mina, like, if you're going to end up with Marko Arnautovic, on what planet do you say goodbye to Edin Dzeko? Like, you know, if that's where you're headed.
I know 3 years younger is...
Yeah, but with none of the Champions League pedigree, with none of that pedigree of deciding games.
Look at what Dzeko's doing right now in Turkey.
Nothing about Dzeko's performance last season suggested that he was finished. So, like, if you're going to do it, sure, wages come into it as well. But if you're spending 10 million euros, then for another season, it doesn't make any sense to me. You're not making a long-term investment. But there's so many other deals that they seem to be sort of going out of their way to make a mess of. I mean, Samardzic, like, you know, there's so many things that just like you look at and think, how have you managed to contrive this all so badly? And clearly there was hope at a certain point as when they'd signed Lukaku. That hasn't happened.
Grossens is going.
Yeah, which is, you know, one of those transfers again that on the surface I go, well, okay, you know, he wasn't starting. But on the other hand, that was, like you just said, Mina, part of what made Inter compelling last season, part of why I think they ended Serie A as the strongest team for the last few months, part of why they belonged to Champions League final was because unlike so many other teams in Serie A, they could look to their bench and go, we've got real options, we've got real quality. And that is definitely being punctured. I think I'm a bit more optimistic than you on Thuram. I've heard some good noises from people who I trust, but, you know, there's definitely big questions with Inter.
It's just that the thing is, right, is that Lautaro Martinez, hopefully not this season, hopefully every season he gets that bit better, right? But he is a streaky player and we know that, you know?
Yeah.
And so what you sort of secure when you have Dzeko and Lukaku is alternatives to that. Of course, Thuram could come in and be a phenomenon, you know? Korea's still there.
I was just thinking to myself, like, when you looked at that group, again, to my depth, like, you know, last season, Champions League final, knowing you've got the options of
bringing Lukaku and Brozovic off the bench,
Lukaku, and like, which is the one striker that no Inter fan wants to pitch Korea. Can you just imagine now at this point that he might be the last one that's still there?
Do you know what I mean?
In another year, maybe Lautaro moves on and Korea's just still there. Oh, God.
Maybe they should go for Vlahovic. But like, do the swap deal, right?
Yeah.
But I just look, honestly, all these, you know, they got Carlos Augusto from Augusto. I don't actually know how you say his name.
I would have said Augusto.
Yeah, Augusto from Monza. So that's a good deal for them as well. But there's a part of me that can't quite figure out whether it's going to be great, and because they can be on their day, they can be the very best, you know. Or they're going to be a slight disappointment this season. But I have question marks like that over every single club.
Yeah.
There is nobody right now that I look at and I think to myself, this is a really great team. I actually did think that about Inter last season. I looked at that team and I thought they were pretty perfect. So now I have certain question marks. Everyone is talking about the American Revolution, obviously at Mina. They brought in so many new players. Now it's an attack that no longer depends on Rafael Leao, even though they haven't got the thing that we wanted them all to get, which is a striker. But
well, maybe go Okafor. I'm just
Okafor.
not sure if I'm sold on that as a real alternative. You know, it's like saying,
Exactly.
you know, last season they got Origi, but, you know, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on Okafor.
Maybe he'll score a bunch of goals,
Yeah.
and then, you know, I mean, Giroud is still doing wonderfully well anyway. But now you have an attack that is a lot more balanced, that's not dependent on Leao or sort of left-leaning. And Chukwueze, for me, if there's any player that I've ever wanted for my team, it was him. I'm such a fan of Chukwueze. Reinders is somebody that can also do a lot, obviously from midfield. Loftus-Cheek is another one. Pulisic, which I don't know. I think Nicky's a little bit more optimistic
I'm
about
more
him.
optimistic for Pulisic. I remember like his best stuff at Borussia Dortmund. I remember some of his performances when he first got to Chelsea. I think there's a good player in there, and I think that Stefano Pioli is someone I believe in to get the most out of a player.
I agree with that.
I think with Milan, like, the optimism comes from the wealth of options, like you were just saying. Like, the thing at Milan that last season was bad for them was just that you knew where they were going to get you. Obviously, like, if there were injuries, it was a disaster. If Leao wasn't there, disaster. But you knew if a front's healthy, right? Well, they're coming down the left-hand side. There's Hernandez, there's Leao, there's Tonali drifting out there as well. They were going to overload that side and attack you down it. And now, hopefully, you don't know that. Like, when you're playing against them, hopefully you're thinking, well, I don't know. What if it's Chukwueze? What if it's coming through Pulisic? What if the play's still coming through Leao? And that's all really promising. But you have lost a huge piece from your midfield in Sandro Tonali, and you've got a defence that's got Tomori, who hasn't looked like the player we thought he was in about a year, that's going to be relying on, I'm not sure, Thiaw or Kalulu alongside him. I think this team feels like it's got a real glass jaw, and maybe they'll be enough improved going forwards that they'll just be a really entertaining and successful team. But I think that's the question I have with them is how glass is that jaw?
You know, when I used to think about why I loved Inter and Milan, sort of 2 years, you know, now that they've been winning in the seasons that they were winning the Scudetto. So when I look back and I think of, like, you know, the year that Inter did so well, and obviously Milan, even last season, you know, reaching Champions League final, it's a good midfield, right? You look at the options there, Çalhanoğlu, Mkhitaryan, Nico Barella, obviously the very best, and Brozovic, and then for Milan, when they won the Scudetto, it was Kessie, Benacer, and Tonali, and you just thought, what a perfectly balanced midfield. Kessie leaving already put a lot of strain on that midfield last season, and you could see that a lot of the defense was exposed far too often. There just wasn't the work rate that was available when you had somebody who was helping Tonali. Tonali was asked to do too much at the time. I think that obviously at certain points it was it works well when everyone works well together. And actually what you spotted as the problems were them being dependent on Leao, you know, and Mina missing was a huge thing for them as well. So that also added to their defensive problems. But now I think Benazir's out. I think it's a midfield that works hard, but Loftus-Cheek, Reinders, I don't know. I don't know if there's enough sort of to secure that defence. And then I look at the defence and I don't think it's exceptional. So there are all sorts of problems for me, but I think attack-wise, they're stunning. Yeah. They have such a complete attack right now. I'm just a little bit worried about them sort of off the ball, should I say that? Especially because you have players like Theo Hernandez, who is sort of another auxiliary attacker. And it just worries me, what if they're facing teams that have better control on the ball? And what are they going to be able to do? But again, it remains to be seen, because Stefano Pioli is somebody that we trust, and we trust that he'll figure it out.
Okay, Mina, so I think we've probably got about as much as we can do right now, because we've both got cars.
Can we not talk about Juve? Quickly.
Okay, quickly on Juve. Your thoughts on Juve?
I think they're going to win the league, and I think that's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy, isn't it? But it's one game a week. And I just think when you're playing one game a week, and you have Chiesa who's not injured, and I just think it's enough when all the other teams are concerned with trying to play every 3 days.
I think it's absolutely like what they're focused on all in now, because there's no other thing to focus on. And I think that creates a really interesting dynamic at Juventus. Like they have to win it this year. I think that's absolutely like all that they're going to be thinking about. And it's the question, like, are they good enough? Last season, without the points penalty, of course, they'd be a comfortable top 4. But they weren't really title contenders. There were times when people were trying to tell us they were, but they weren't. You know, Napoli were miles ahead. Having said that, that Napoli team, none of us expect them to have that strong of a season again. So it does open the door. I can see where you're coming from. I think my pick to win the league this season is Inter, but it's not a confident Inter. I think genuinely I could believe Napoli, I could believe Milan, I could believe Juventus, definitely. Maybe I could even believe in Atalanta. I couldn't believe Lazio, I'm sorry. So
Napoli, honestly, the only thing that stops us was really Garcia, because they do have the best squad.
Yeah.
And I love Gabriel Vega that they brought in, Gabriel Vega. So I think that
he's not in yet, but they're working on it.
Great addition if he comes in. But I think the team is stacked. It's wonderful. Austin is just the best striker in Serie A. Obviously, we've seen Kvaratskhelia. It's just that Spalletti is such added value, and you take that away and you're worried.
Yeah. So we really haven't talked about Napoli. We should say, like, literally the title holders. There's a lot of assumptions baked into it. It's exactly what Mina just said. Like, their squad's brilliant. Their team's brilliant. I think Victor Osimhen means that even if you put me in charge, they still be in the top 4, frankly. So Rudy Garcia will not be disastrous, I don't think.
No.
Confusing appointment. I don't think any of us understand it still. I don't think you do. I don't think I do.
You should have gone for Vincenzo Italiano.
Right, I would have loved that. So I'm baffled by that choice to go Rudy Garcia. I don't think he's awful, but he's not a manager who I hold as like one of the great managers of European football. And I think Napoli deserve one of the great managers of European football. So that's the reservation with Napoli. I also think worth saying Kim Min-jae is a big loss. He was spectacular last season. He was so good.
Just like Milinkovic-Savic is for Lazio, so God help them this season.
Yeah, so I think Napoli, I take a small step back for me because of the change of manager, and I think maybe that's enough, but I don't see them as favourites. So for me, Mina, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say Inter. You're saying Juventus?
I mean, Inter's some better team, right? But yeah, I do say Juventus because it's one game a week.
Okay, and your top 4 is?
I don't know. Because I think Atalanta have a shout, but I think it's got to be Napoli, Milan and Inter and Juve.
Okay, so I'm going with Inter, I'm going to go with Juventus and Napoli. I'm going to go with Milan. Yeah, it's the same top 4. Sorry, I can't put Atalanta in there.
It should be Inter that wins it, not Juve. It should really be Inter.
I want to put Atalanta in there when I sort of think about it, but then I can't see who I'm dropping out. I don't think Napoli drop out. I think Osimhen alone carries them into the top 4.
Have Milan done enough to win it? Because it's a lot of changes. It might be good enough.
I think Milan are a real wild card for me.
Yeah, and they're either brilliant or not so much.
Yeah, I could believe them winning the league. I could believe any of these teams, maybe even Atalanta winning the league, maybe. But the problem for Milan, for me, is I just think they're going to concede a lot of goals. I don't think that's been resolved, and I think that makes it hard to finish top of the pile. Top 4 is a different thing, but if you're conceding a lot of goals, I think it's really hard to win the league.
Yunus Musa, it's a good midfield. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's one of those where I don't know how to judge things anymore.
That's why we're excited for a new season.
Exactly. So like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about things. Who do we think is going to be top striker? Who do we think is going to be relegated? My money's on it too. But we'll get back to you, and thank you so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.
Good job. Okay, Mina, so we had our little chat at Sky Studios the other day, previewing the big teams in Serie A, doing the obvious part of the conversation about who we think will be in the title race, about who we think the challenges for European spots are. We chose our top 4, and I enjoyed that. But I think we'd be shortchanging our Serie A Chronicles tifosi if we don't have a chat as well about who we think is going to be in the relegation dogfight this season, and I think just generally to throw out a few more other bits and pieces to preview that we might not have got to, talking about the top clubs. So I had a couple of categories I thought I'd give us for this week, just to tee things up and to throw ahead to the season. The first one that came into my mind is brilliant, it's perfect. I think this sums up the way of sort of how we probably actually think about football and what we think we should think about football, which is I felt that we should have who our favourite signing of the summer was. And I'm laughing about it because I thought that we'll definitely do that. It's a good category for us to have, favourite signing of the summer. It'd be a good thing to put in the podcast. We can clip it up, be nice and short. And I thought to myself, I actually don't know. I don't know who I'm going to pick for this. I had to have a really sort of long think about who I like best out of the different summer transfer moves, because there's been a few interesting ones, right? It's not that I'm short of ideas, I just don't know there's one sort of stand out this summer who really grabs me. I think that Milan have made a lot of interesting signings, and perhaps Chukwueze jumps out among them as a player who looks really exciting, like he can come in, provide that immediate difference on the right hand side of the attack to balance Rafael Leao on the other side, which that attack has been screaming out for. So Chukwueze, for instance, springs to mind right away as a player I really, really like. I like Fratesi to Inter, who I know you're not so keen on, and I think with it being a loan deal was quite a nice piece of business in amongst some chaotic mess that was going on for Inter. I think there's lots of other players that I'm curious about. I mean, Christian Pulisic, I know, Mina, again, you're not a huge fan of, but I think could be a nice addition to Milan. To be honest with you, all of Milan's signings intrigue me. I want to know how Loftus-Cheek is going to fit in. I want to know how Moose is going to slot into that midfield. I want to know all of it. But the thing is, I don't know, because I feel like with all of these players, I'm sort of more curious than I am confident in them. These are all players I'm like, okay, I like what you're doing as a club. I like the ideas you've got. But I don't know that I would put my neck on the line for any of these players yet. I think with Milan particularly, I'm sort of looking and going, okay, let's see how it all comes together. And I think there's lots of other players that I could put in that category. I'm excited for Fiorentina with Beltran coming in. Could he be the answer to what they need up front? I like that they signed someone to fill that gap up front, because look, we could certainly look to some other big examples like Roma and say, well, you still haven't signed anyone to fill that spot up front. I'm actually really curious about Castellanos as well at Lazio. I know we talked in the show we did together about not really seeing them as a title contender without Milinkovic-Savic, and I stick by that. But they've signed some interesting names, right? Names that I'm less familiar with, names that I don't get to see as much, and Castellanos obviously was really prolific in Major League Soccer, and then has gone to Spain and had a good season there as well. So I'm curious to see how he'll come across and how he'll settle in Serie A. So there's a bunch that I'm intrigued by, and then I'm going to settle on my actual favourite signings so far in Serie A of the 2023-24 transfer summer window. Which is, it's just the 2023 summer window. I'll say that again. My favourite signing of the 2023 summer transfer window among Serie A clubs, you're going to call this on a cop-out, but it's still true. Boulaye Dia, Salernitana, simply because that's a player who we know they needed and who we know will fit there. He was on loan there, of course, last season, scored 16 goals, which is extraordinary on a team that, especially before they changed managers in mid-season, was really sort of a team that was really struggling, and he scored 16 goals there. That is as nailed on a good deal as you can get. I think they only paid 12 million euros to do the Scudetto, to make his deal permanent. So there's my cop-out answer. My favourite signing of the summer is a player who was already playing for Salernitana last season. It was just on loan, but they made it permanent. And I think that is, without question, going to be one of the best values that anyone gets in Serie A anywhere. So that's my easy win on favourite signing. I was really curious as well. I actually genuinely am sort of really intrigued to hear your answer on this one. I want to know which team, Mina, outside of the title contenders we already talked about, so outside of the top teams, which team you're most excited about watching? And I think the answer for me is actually Genoa, of all teams, partly because of another new signing that I'm curious about, but don't know enough yet to feel confident sticking my neck out for, which is Matteo Retegui. Obviously, there was a huge sort of media fuss earlier this year when he was brought into the Italian national team setup. I remember you and I, Mina, talking about it, debating it a little bit, whether we were comfortable with this sort of Oriundo strategy of bringing in someone who hadn't really had that in his lifetime sort of experience of being in Italy, of connecting to Italy, but who had the heritage. And I think we fell on slightly different sides on that one. But regardless of how we feel about that, I just am really intrigued by this player. I think he actually, in his 3 games for the national team, he did well. He scored 2 goals. And I think for a team that is coming up from Serie B, that is looking to make that foothold and find a way to cling on in Serie A, because it's always difficult. Every team that comes up is always struggling to make that leap permanent, to make it into something that lasts. I think finding a potential goal scorer, someone who's just going to get those goals for you at a price that's not going to break you, is very hard to do. And I think being the team that was brave enough to take that gamble on Retegui, to go and get him from Tigre and to say, right, we'll be the ones who bring you to Europe, give an Italian national team player a chance to play in the Italian top division. I'm really, really intrigued about that decision. And yeah, they're probably the team, I would say, outside of the obvious ones, the top teams, you know, and I don't just mean the top teams, I'm talking about even Atalanta as well, who we talked about as maybe being a dark horse. I think Genoa, for Retegui alone, perhaps it's my desperation for Italy to find a striker who we can rely on, but they're probably the team I'm most excited to see in this first part of the Serie A season. So there's my 2 questions so far for you, Mina. Which has been your favourite Serie A signing of the summer, and which is the team outside of the European chase that we already talked about that you're most excited to watch? And the last question I think we have to talk about, because we hadn't had a chance to do that yet, is the relegation battle. So I'm going to say we each need to name our 3 teams that we think will go down this year. I think, again, newly promoted teams are always sort of big candidates in this conversation. So Genoa, already mentioned. Cagliari, of course, had that bonkers promotion campaign under Claudio Ranieri. For anyone who missed this last season, I know we talked about it a bit, but obviously we do focus more on Serie A. When Ranieri took charge of Cagliari right before Christmas, I think it was, maybe like the 22nd or 23rd of December, he got the job. They were 12th. So they were a long, long way from promotion when he took charge. And he got them up to 5th, and they won the promotion playoff. And so incredible stuff for Claudio, who arrives in Serie A again at 71 years old, which really made me laugh that as well, because I'm sure you guys will remember it, but way back when he was in his peak feud era with Jose Mourinho, Jose was sort of saying, oh, you know, he hasn't won anything and he's almost 70, which of course is before he won the league at Leicester, Claudio. And so that was, I checked, it was all the way back in 2008 Mourinho said that. I just thought, what a cheeky so-and-so that he was calling Claudio nearly 70 in 2008, when in fact Ranieri is only just 71 in 2023. So yeah, that made me laugh. But anyway, yeah, so Ranieri comes up, he did a sensational job improving that team in immediately to get them from being a mid-table side to getting up and making this promotion playoff happen. They've got some interesting players. I think in particular a sort of player on that team I'm curious to see play in Serie A is Antoine Makumbu. He's been a really sort of pivotal player for them in their midfield, a really dynamic player who's helped sort of give them that something different, something special that helped them on their promotion push. I think they've signed a few players, the most interesting of which to me is probably Shimorodov. I think that midfield combination, in fact, between him and his physical strength, and Makumbu, who's a bit more dynamic, I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. So I'm excited to see Ranieri back. I'm definitely interested to see what his team's going to look like, but I do have worries for them. I do think this is a team that when I look at it, I don't see the obvious goals in it. They relied on Lapadula in Serie B. I don't think Lapadula, whatever he is now, 33, 34, I think, is a player I would want to be pinning all my hopes on up front. I know Luvumbo's been having a good pre-season as well, so maybe he'll make something happen, but he wasn't prolific in Serie B, so I have worries for Cagliari, even though I would love to believe that Claudio will make it happen. The third newly promoted team is Frosinone, who came up under Fabio Grosso, and they're probably the team I have least positive hopes for, because they took a team that got promoted and scored very freely on the way to getting promotion, and it's like they've changed everything essential about it. They've completely sort of stripped away all these sort of certainties about the team. Roberto Insigne was part of that attack, obviously brother of Lorenzo. He's gone to Palermo. Samuele Mulattieri also part of that attack, so they had to play with a 3-man attack. He's also gone, so you've got 2 out of 3 of your starting attack on this high scoring team are gone. Most importantly, the manager Fabio Grosso, who got promoted, is gone, and Eusebio Di Francesco replaces him. It's been a while since Di Francesco has done a job that has really made me believe in him, unfortunately. So yeah, a lot of questions for me about this this Frosinone team. I think they've got 5 or 6 new starters probably coming in. And when I say new, I mean players who are new to the team coming in. And really not a lot of certainty out of that 3-man attack. Again, only Giuseppe Caso remains. I have to be honest, I don't feel optimistic for either Cagliari or Frosinone. There are some other teams that could get drawn into this relegation fight for certain. I already mentioned Salernitana keeping hold of Buledia, and I think Salernitana keeping hold of Buledia is the only reason right now that I might pick them to avoid the drop, because that team has lost pieces this summer. They've lost Christoph Piontek, who had not a transformative but a useful impact for them last season. Tony Villena, who had a even more important role for them certainly last season, is gone. They really haven't added anything at all, and so right now for Salernitana, the things I'm hanging on to as well. Paulo Sousa did have a good impact after coming in and replacing Davide Nicola, and they've got Buledia. And look, if Dia scores 16 goals again, you're probably fine. You don't often see teams getting relegated with one of Serie A's top scorers in the team, and I think that alone might be enough for them. But right now, I definitely see some pretty big worrying signals for that club, and I think they could easily get drawn into a relegation fight. The other one I'm worried for out of the teams that was up last season, Verona. I mean, they've been sort of scraping by a little bit for a while. I think that Temese coming out of that team as well, selling Temese is a big loss. That's someone who was a really integral starter for the team last season. He's off to Torino. Nice pickup for Torino, I think, by the way. So yeah, I'm worried for Verona. And putting myself on the spot here, because Mina's not here to do it, I'm going to go with Frosinone definitely going down, and I'm going to put Verona and Cagliari in there with them. I'm sorry, Claudio. I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm a little bit hyped about Retegui, and maybe I'll come to think that was a stupid thing to think in not so long. Maybe I'll look around in a small amount of time and think maybe that was naive of me to think that Retegui alone could be a player who would keep them up. But that's it from me. Mina, I'm so excited to hear your thoughts, and I'm so excited for the weekend's games and to start talking about these games in our Serie A postcards this season.
Hi, Nicky. Thank you for your voice note. I just finished recording a podcast for the BBC, and they all were making fun of me because they asked me who I thought was going to win Serie A, and I said Juventus, and then they all started laughing. And I understand it, because Juventus regularly make me wonder if it's worth watching the sport anymore, especially the kind of football that we've seen last year from Max Allegri. But I always believe in a side that plays once a week, right? Call me stupid. But Inter should win it. Inter should win it. Or Napoli. Now, here's the thing. I actually want to talk about Napoli because when we were together, I will address your questions, so don't worry. But I sort of, I hate the word, but I did a little bit of a, I don't know if it's just me, or it's just people's memories in general, but I'm forgetting everything at the moment, yeah. And I was trying to think back on Rudy Garcia's Roma, and I was like, gosh, I can't even remember that much. I remember Castan, I remember sort of Strootman in the midfield that they had, and I was like, oh, you know, it was like the best of Pjanic, right? You know, like this is what I remember of him. But I don't, and then I come across this article, and I thought it was a really funny article because it was like mentioning porn and all of the stuff. And it was me, I had written that article. So I could not believe that I'm there reading this piece about how Rudy Garcia had done such a good job with Roma, not realising I was reading my own words that I used to write for the Daily Mirror many, many, many years ago. It was like my first column, I think, at the time. So 10 years ago. So yes. So I've become a little bit more hopeful about Napoli, and now I think that they could actually win it. And I started remembering, I really like that side. I mean, granted, there wasn't that much competition other than Juventus at the time that were obviously rampant, so it was always very difficult to get over that Juve side. But, you know, Rudy Garcia had managed the most number of points at the time before Spalletti broke that record when he arrived afterwards. But he had gotten like 85 points in a season. It was a great midfield. I thought they were defensively strong. They were attackingly fun to watch. And I don't know why I sort of fell out of love for him. Or perhaps felt like recently when everyone said Rudy Garcia, I'm a bit like, oh, but it's not Spalletti, right? Oh. But then you remember things, right? You remember his journey. You remember his Lyon side that dumped Juventus out of the Champions League. But that wasn't just the important thing. They also dumped Manchester City out of the Champions League in 2020. It was a COVID year, so I'll give you that. I mean, you know, but then obviously you remember that he was in Saudi. He was coaching Ronaldo. He didn't do a great job. And either way, I think that the team that he has and the personality that he's got, it's going to be interesting. I also think that he's somebody who always has a lot of balance. And I've rethought my position on Napoli. And I think that, honestly, it deserves a rethink. But I do think he might have enough to push them over the line again. Because it's Victor Osimhen. It's Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. Actually, a lot of people have been asking me this. Why has there not been more conversations about Kvaratskhelia leaving Napoli? Why have not so many European teams come in for him? And one thing I want to say is that people are quite well aware of the fact that he doesn't really want to leave unless it's Real Madrid. And so he has a clear development plan, and that plan is to consolidate his position, to consolidate Napoli's position in world football as well, to be part of that until Madrid come and get him. And I don't know if they're coming soon, but I don't know how interested he is in leaving if it's not for them. Otherwise, I think he's very happy where he is. Okay, so let me answer some of your questions that you were talking about. You asked me which is the player that I'm most interested in watching. I do like your response. I think it's a very clever response, to be honest with you. I'm not so down on Salernitana in general. I understand why people are, but I'm somebody who always believes in coaches more than I believe in teams. And I think that I was very impressed with them last season and managing to secure his signing. And Salernitana in general having Paulo Sousa, who's now had the whole summer to work with his players, makes me believe that maybe they might escape relegation. But before I get into the relegation dogfight, my favourite signing is Samuel Chukwueze. I think that he is a tremendous player. He's so dynamic, he's unpredictable, he's clever, he's good on the ball, he's great off it. I think that he's been taught very well at Villarreal, and I think they were lucky to get him for the price that they got him, because I think he's easily a player that's worth twice the amount that they paid for him. So I'm excited to see Milan playing with so many new players. There's just so many different players to watch and see. I think Yunus Musa is going to be very exciting as well. I think that he's an interesting profile that I'd like to watch. He's got high ceiling, so I'd like to see him live up to his potential. And when you've got Stefano Pioli you know that that's a possibility with him as your coach. I think maybe 8 players and counting, right? It's just a tad too much for me to believe in their chances to win the title. But Chukwueze is the kind of player that you would want to balance out a Rafael Leao. And I just feel like if you've got these two guys coming at you, and you've got Giroud in the middle, or you've got Okafor in the middle, it's Pulisic. Pulisic. Sorry. It's interesting. It's not that I'm not as excited about Pulisic. I think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's just that I have higher hope for Chukwueze. I always think of how I think of players as if I want them on my team, right? And if I could pick from the players that Milan have bid for. I like Reinders a lot as well, but I would pick Yunus Musa and I would pick Chukwueze. Pulisic, there's also other things that make him an attractive player to bring in. Obviously, he is the star of the American national team. He's a great character. And he is a very good player. I mean, you need only remember what he did with Borussia Dortmund. But I guess because it's very, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for him at Chelsea that maybe I'm not as excited as I would be, as I am for watching Samuel Chukwueze. So that's my favourite. Fratesi, you mentioned Fratesi. I think he's an excellent addition. Don't get me wrong. I love him for my team. I guess my issue when I look at Inter in general, and don't get me wrong, I understand the decision to, I understand that Brozovic is older now and Edin Dzeko is older and time comes for all of us, and Saudi was there waiting for likes of Brozovic. But to me, he is such an essential component on that midfield. And Fratesi is an excellent person to bring in. But I don't know why there's just... I look at that Inter team, and it's not Fratesi. I look at that Inter team, and I think there's a lot about it that's very good and very exciting. Carlos Augusto, Marcus Thuram could be a revelation. But there's also this part of me that's just a little bit like, I don't know why, that my hand is a bit on my heart, because I don't know whether they just look that bit weaker than they were last season. And I don't see a clear project in the sense that I see one at Milan. I understand the direction they're going in. I understand what they're trying to build, even though I was quite critical of the decision to sell Sandro Tonali and to let go of Paolo Maldini. They have invested quickly, they've acquired their targets, and they did excellent work in the transfer market. And Inter, barring Fratesi and a few others, I'm just a little bit like, I don't know about all of this, The team that I'm most excited to watch that's not a powerhouse is Atalanta, but I feel like they are a powerhouse, so I don't know, I'm dying to see De Ketelaere. I'm dying to prove myself right. I am so bad at spotting talent. I'm so bad at, this is one thing that I'm, like, the only thing that I do well as coach is I'm not great at realizing which players will really be outstanding, but I do think De Ketelaere is someone special, and I really want him to have the chance to show that. I'm interested to see Toure. I'm interested to see Scamacca. So I think it could be really fun to watch in general. Fiorentina, I'm always interested to watch as well with Italiano, because every season he's just that bit better. He gives me that many more reasons to believe in him and what he decides to do going forward. So Fiorentina is another one that I'm really interested to watch, but mostly it's Genoa. I'm a little bit in love with Genoa at the moment, so I am so happy they managed to keep Gilardino. I'm so happy to look at this team and the interesting way in which they play their football. How I find them fascinating, the way that the midfielders move, the way that the centre backs sometimes act as fullbacks, the investments that they have made in the transfer market, and I've just understood right now that Malinovsky is arriving, which is another great deal for them. So Genoa is, you asked me about the relegation. I don't think Genoa. Let me just have a look at the players that they've brought in. And Retegui, you've mentioned him. They're not a team that I think will be going down. I think that they have a great manager that's done a tremendous job to put them back into Serie A. I think they've got a good management behind them with a clear plan and a clear strategy of how they're going to invest. And that 777, everyone knows about them now. I think that, we have exciting players to look at, from Retegui to potentially Malinovsky coming back to the league. So I believe in Genoa, I believe in their style of play, and I believe that they'll be interesting to watch. I am also hopeful that Cagliari will stay up. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Cagliari. The love is for Ranieri, the hate is, I always associate Cagliari to racist movements, and I know that's not really fair, but it's not always been the happiest place to visit. Not for me, but just, for some of the football, for some of our football players. So, Cagliari, I believe in Ranieri. I believe in what they are. I just think that there are worse teams right now. And so I kind of want to see Scudetto. I'm sort of excited about him. He's one guy that I feel sorry for. I still like Shmorodov. I always feel like he never had the chance to show how good he is. Certainly not under Jose Mourinho. But I think they might have just enough. The team that I agree with you, I think Frosinone, just because it's Di Francesco as well, and because they lost their star striker, the guy who scored all the goals for them. And that for me is a huge, huge loss if you're going to lose Mulattieri. So that's one. It's too many pieces that they're losing at the moment, and it's something to worry about, frankly speaking. They do have Nkuni, who's an Albanian striker, really big boy from Bayern Munich. I was kind of excited about it. It has a lot to do with the fact that it was Bayern Munich, I'm not going to lie. But then I spoke to a few German journalists who were like, don't be that excited. So now I'm less excited about that. It's also, it's a shame that I think they had created this great synergy with Fabio Grosso, and that not being there is going to be a point of contention. So for me, it's Frosinone. I think Verona could go down. I agree with you, because Tamese is such a big loss, and I hate thinking that, because there's something special about Verona, especially their styles of play that we've watched, and whether it was Igor Tudor or it's such a shame to me that they're sort of crumbling. But Marco Baroni has obviously decided to join them. He's their coach, and he must believe in the cause. I mean, to me, he's the reason Lecce is there. So that's my other team. I think Lecce is down for sure. And I'm surprised that you didn't mention them. I believe in Salernitana. I believe they will stay up. But Lecce for sure, I think, is going down. And you know how I feel about Hulmond. So the fact that he's not there anymore and controlling that midfield, and the man that just does everything that they need him to do in the middle, the dirty work, the intelligence, his presence alone. I wanted him for Juventus. I wanted him for Milan when they desperately needed a body in midfield. I would have wanted him, I think that he deserves to be in, maybe not in an elite team, obviously, but in a better team. And I think that Lecce has too many players that were good going, including their coach, who is exhausted after the season and keeping them up there. So obviously no more Umtiti either, no more Cisse. So yes, I do, I think for me it's Lecce is going down. So that's my decision. Samuel Chukwueze is my favourite signing. Lecce, Frosinone, and I think I agree with you on Hellas Verona. Maybe Cagliari. Oh, I believe in Ranieri. I don't know. Anyway, those are my decisions. If you guys agree with us or don't agree with us, which is the team that you're excited to watch? Monza. Monza's the team I'm excited to watch. Can Palladino really do it now? He's had a full stretch, obviously the whole summer to work. He's lost Rovella, so I think it's a big loss for him. But exciting team, exciting players within it. A management that is, we know them. And I'm just so interested to see Palladino take care of a team from the start and what he can do. But it's a tough opening day weekend, so I'm interested to see what Monza can do with that. But otherwise, they were fantastic to watch last season. And Napoli. I believe in Napoli this season now more than I did just by reading my own articles on Rudy Garcia. Okay, that's it. Watch the games. We'll speak to you afterwards. Ciao for now.
Serie A Chronicles is a Serie A Chronicles production.